Hello class, my name is Matthew Perez, and this is my Week 6 multimedia discussion titled Applying ADRs to Public Administration. So let's begin. So the first ADR I'd like to talk about is called Early Neutral Evaluation. And the textbook talks about this ADR into 5 different phases in which the court picks a third-party neutral, and the neutral will hear both sides. After they hear both sides, the neutral will make an appraisal of their estimate of how it would go out in court, and then both sides can decide if they want to resolve the conflict or move forward with full litigation. And I was able to find a scholarly journal article that was written in 2008, and it discussed the entire early neutral evaluation process. And so the article was similar to the textbook, in which it discussed the 5 phases of this ADR, but it went more in depth, and it even suggested that early neutral evaluation can provide better communication, and also it's more cost effective rather than preparing for a full trial. The next ADR I'd like to talk about is called Dispute Resolution Board, and this, according to the textbook, is primarily geared towards large infrastructure projects, in which a panel will meet on a quarterly basis and discuss the project, any updates and any concerns it has, and so they can meet regularly throughout the whole entire project and make multiple decisions on it. So I was able to find a scholarly journal article that was written in 2002, in which the author describes the effectiveness of using the DRB and for construction projects. And it was similar to the textbook, in which it described the DRB into 5 different phases, and it also expanded on the topic by discussing 5 different scenarios of when it's appropriate to use DRB, and it provided the advantages of using DRB. The next ADR I'd like to talk about is called mini trial, and the textbook talks about mini trials more in depth than the other ADRs, it felt like, and something that caught my eye is that it's cheaper than a full litigation, but it's more expensive than mediation or arbitration. So it's geared more towards companies and corporations rather than individuals. And similar to other ADRs, a third party is involved, and it can last 2 to 3 days. And the nice thing about it is there's a high percentage chance of settlement. So I was able to find a scholarly journal article that was written in 1988, and in which it discussed different ADRs, and it was similar to the textbook, and how it talked about how ADRs can add another layer to the legal system and how it can allow lawyers to explore alternatives. It discussed the mini trials and gave advantages. So the article expanded on the topic of mini trials, but it discussed how having an active involvement during the mini trial can be beneficial. And it was interesting because the author concluded by saying that he believes ADRs are a thing of the future, and it'll be just, instead of considering them alternative dispute resolutions, we'll just be calling them dispute resolutions. So the next ADR I'd like to talk about is called Summary Jury Trial. And the textbook briefly discusses this ADR, and what's interesting about this is you can select a jury from a normal jury candidate pool, and you could see how a potential jury or judge might react to this case. And it was interesting to learn that during the trial phases that both parties are allowed, just like a normal trial, to have some opening statements, present their case, and have rebuttals. And then the jury can hold a brief deliberation, and then the final phase is the parties can settle on the dispute and decide if they need to go to a full trial. I was able to find a scholarly journal article that was written in 1992, in which it discussed the different ADRs, but it primarily focused on the summary jury trial and provided a more in-depth analysis of the process and the outcome. And something that was similar to the textbooks, it discussed the same phases as the textbook did for the summary jury trial. The article expanded from the textbook, in which providing suggestions on how the summary jury trial process can be more effective if it involves the focus on settlement incentives. And it also said it can also be an improvement to the settlement litigation process. Changes are made to the current process. So I'd also like to discuss a news article about the ADRs I just discussed, and I found one that was recently settled in 2019 in Vermont, in which there was a settlement was reached in July of 2019 between Vermont Access Network, Comcast, and Public Service Department. It dated back to 2017 when Comcast sued the Public Utilities Commission, and the Public Utilities Commission requested to do early neutral negotiations to settle the process. The article relates to the textbook and how they were able to settle the dispute using one of the ADRs, the early neutral evaluation, and the article talks about early neutral negotiations briefly, and it says a lot of it can't be discussed because it's still in the settlement stage and it hasn't been finalized. Here's my list of references, and thank you for listening to my presentation about ADRs. Have a great week.